Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of the Export to Japan podcast. In this particular episode, we are going to be looking into the mysterious and exciting world of subsidies, tax incentives, and grants, etc. in Japan. Over the past 10 years or so, since we started the Export to Japan project, we've had numerous companies looking to come into the Japanese market and maybe set up their operation there, incorporate a company, open an office, hire people, etc. And one of the questions that regularly comes up from those companies is, what kind of subsidies or tax incentives may I be able to tap into? And there's no doubt that there are various incentives out there that foreign companies should be aware of and should tap into. Some of them are easy to find and easy to apply for. Some of them much more difficult to find and challenging to apply for. So it's been a little bit of a complicated sort of landscape for those foreign companies looking to go into Japan. And for that reason, I was delighted when I heard about this new initiative that's been worked on by an organization called the GI3 Group to kind of answer and give a solution to these specific questions and challenges that Japanese companies, or more important for this podcast, foreign companies, the questions that they have in their mind about how they may be able to track down and apply for some of these support initiatives. So for today's particular discussion, I intend to learn a lot more about the overall landscape for this area in Japan. I intend to ask questions about what extent foreign companies are taking advantage of these initiatives and when they're not taking advantage, a little bit about some of the specific fields where it may apply, some questions about what may be happening to improve the system that's out there, and most importantly, this unique project that we've heard about that the GI3 Group have worked on and how it may be able to help you and benefit you. And then finally, I'll be asking some questions about what the future looks like in this particular area for subsidies, grants, etc. And to help us with this discussion, I am delighted to say that we've tracked down the guy behind the GI3 Group initiative, and this is Masaki Miura. Masaki-san is here with us. Welcome to the Export to Japan podcast, Masaki-san.
Thank you so much, Steve. I'm very great to be here, and it's my honor to be here. Thank you so much.
Well, it's our pleasure too. I know you are a very busy man, so we are delighted that you could give us some of your time to talk to us about this topic and explain more about what you've been working on. By way of introduction, Masaki-san, he is the leader of the GI3 Group in Deloitte, Japan. GI3 stands for Global Investment and Innovation Incentives. Miura-san has extensive experience in supporting both Japanese and foreign companies with tax incentives and subsidies, and he also provides expertise and advice to government agencies. So I think he's very well equipped to help us on today's topic. Now, Masaki-san, before we dive into the sort of specific detail, I'd like to just sort of ask a very general question of you to kick off the discussion. Could you tell us a little bit more about a sort of general overview of the grants and tax incentives landscape in Japan?
Sure. I think this is definitely the first question I may have from you, so let's start with it. So the basic idea is that Japan, like other countries, has tax incentives and subsidies created by both the central government and local governments. And these benefits are typically tied to investments in one, equipment, or two, employment. And some incentives require you to submit a business plan to the government and get approval before making such investments, while others do not. And recently, similar to Inflation Reduction Act in the US, and the Green Deal industry policy in Europe, Japan has also been introducing measures to encourage investment in specific areas. And Japan's economic growth rate has not been, very high compared to other countries recently. In fact, the global GDP rankings, Japan has been overtaken by Germany and is now in fourth place. And to things around, it's crucial to revitalize Japan, especially its local regions, and large investment from foreign companies could be a game changer. And the Japanese government also believes that, increasing foreign direct investment is vital, and creating and using incentive is a key to making this happen.
Yeah, great. That's a really good introduction, and that certainly confirms my overview of how I'd seen the situation as well. Well, if we drill down a little further and take the conversation forward, it's very clear that there is support for foreign companies entering Japan. But one of the questions I wanted to ask you from your experience, are there many cases where foreign companies are unable to take advantage of the available incentives for any reason?
Right. Unfortunately, this often happens, and it is the case. While support is available, many foreign companies don't fully take advantage of their available incentives. There can be various reasons for this, such as lack of awareness about the incentives, of course, and complicated application process, and the perception that these benefits are hard to obtain, and most importantly, the language barriers. We aim for those companies to properly utilize the tax incentives and subsidies available in Japan, thereby increasing the scale of their investments and changing their business behavior to contribute to the development of the Japanese economy.
Mm. Yeah, and you know what a sad situation to think that there are incentives and benefit programs out there, and various different Japanese government agencies are making those programs available. But unfortunately, the take up from foreign companies is not as strong as it could be due to
Mhm.
some of those kind of barriers or perceived barriers that you spoke about the potential complications of finding those incentive programs, working out how to apply for them, language barriers, cultural barriers, etc.,
Exactly.
preventing companies from going forward. It's an unfortunate situation, and I guess that might be one of the reasons that you've sort of seen that opportunity to help and support companies. And we'll come on to that in a little bit more in a
Okay.
few moments' time. But one of the questions I wanted to ask you next was, in the media, we often hear that Japan is sort of enhancing government support measures in certain fields, such as one that comes to mind is semiconductors, for example. I
Mhm.
know recently I've seen some media news on that particular sector. Are foreign companies also unable to take advantage of these incentives in a field such as semiconductors, for example?
Yes, that's very a good question. And my answer would be yes and no. And for those companies who makes very large scale investments in a range of tens of billions to hundreds of billions of yen, they are highly committed to, these investments, and thus, therefore, develop strategies to utilize incentives are and actively work towards securing them. And in fact, there have been cases where foreign companies investing in areas like Kyushu have received subsidies on the scale of hundreds of billions of yen, maybe as you know. However, if the investment is not on that scale, we see that only a few companies are able to take advantage of Japanese incentives. Generally speaking, for investments over 1 billion yen, which is around 10 million US dollars, it is worth considering applying for incentives to improve their return on investment. This applies to the semiconductor field as well as to the sectors like decarbonization, battery storage, data center, and other strategic areas that Japan is aiming to attract investment in. And there are substantial support measures prepared for these fields. So not only the semiconductor, but also other, famous industry that Japanese government is looking at. So that would be my questions.
Yeah, it's fascinating to hear about the, potential size and scope of incentives and benefits that can be available, particularly in those fields that you just mentioned, those fields that are sort of a priority to the Japanese government. And certainly for us here in the UK, we have many companies working in those fields, and I know a lot of those companies have Japan on their radar. So for those particular companies working in those sectors, this is really, really relevant information. But of course, it doesn't just apply to those sectors. There are many other business areas where these kind of incentives are available as well. But one of the next questions I really wanted to ask you is, it's very clear that there are numerous incentive programs available in Japan, but it does appear that not, so many foreign companies are actually really diving in and utilizing them. So what efforts are being made on the Japan side to sort of improve this situation?
That's another great question. In Japan, there is a public organization called JETRO, Japan External Trade Organization. Maybe you have already heard of it. That provides some information about investment in Japan in English. And however, the information from public institutions is still limited. So I believe that private companies like us need to supplement in this regard. And originally, our GI3 team in Japan offered service to introduce and investigate Japanese incentive for foreign companies. However, this approach only allowed us to reach companies that were already in contact with us. And as we considered ways to introduce Japanese incentives to a broader range of companies worldwide, beyond those we were already contacted with, we launched a site called Japan Incentive Insights last year. And this site allows users to search for major national and prefectural incentives in Japan by setting such criteria. And it has already been used by many foreign companies now. It is often utilized when formulating investment plans or when considering measures to improve ROI through the use of incentives. The site is publicly available for free and does not require membership registrations. And as a result of launching Japanese Incentive Insight, we are now able to deliver information about Japanese incentives to much larger number of foreign companies.
Well, I have to say, when I first came across the site and it came onto my radar, I was so excited, first of all, to know that somebody had seen the need for a site like this and taken the initiative to kind of develop it and get traction with it. Excuse me. But then when I dived in and had the first opportunity to take a look at it, I was even more impressed. And I have to say, I really think your team have done an amazing job on, A, getting the initiative going and off the ground, and B, the way you've set up the site and structured the site and made it as user-friendly as possible. I've had the chance to have a look around, navigate it myself, and I'm super, super impressed. Excuse me a moment. It's the excitement of the site. But maybe for a lot of our audience, this will be the first time they've heard about the site and had the chance to go and have a look. So could you just talk us through and sort of give us a brief explanation of how the site works and how a user should navigate and use the site?
Sure. It's very simple though. If you search for Japan Incentive Insights or Japanese incentives on the internet, the relevant page will appear at the top of your result. And the page should be displayed in English by default. But if it appears in Japanese, you can switch to English by selecting the language option at the top right of the page. And after that, you can either enter keywords of interest into the search window or click on advanced search at the bottom of the screen to narrow down the search result by investment location, industry, etc. And once the search results are displayed, you can click on the name of the incentives to access detailed information. And additionally, we provide specific examples and explanations of noteworthy incentives on our blogs. So be sure to check those out as well.
That's great. And just to recap on a couple of really important points to bring out there to make sure they didn't get missed. So the site is free to use, and
Yes.
visitors to the site do not need to register or anything like that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Very, very, very good. That's wonderful. So you mentioned the site has been up and been available for a while. In terms of how the progress is going, are there any examples you could give us of how foreign companies are sort of using the site or have been interacting with the site so far? Anything you can tell us about that?
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure. Of course, well, we have, confidentiality issues, so we cannot share all the information we have. But we know a company that was considering investing somewhere in Asia and used Japan Incentive Insight to conduct an initial study when comparing multiple countries. And of course, incentives can be open or closed depending on the timing. So it's very important to check the latest trend in more detail. But typically, companies conduct an initial survey study using Japan Incentive Insight and then request more detailed examination from advisors like us after that.
That's great. Okay, so really giving us that example, that's not just an example of a foreign company that had already made their decision to set up and invest in Japan, and they were
Mhm.
working out where can they get the best support within Japan. That was an example of a company that were looking to do something in Asia, and they were looking at different countries, and then they made the decision that maybe Japan might be the right country. So you attracted that investment in from the region.
Yes, exactly. I
That's
think
fantastic.
most of the countries has already, published their information in English, but Japan does not, so good at about it. So we have JII, Japan Incentive Insight, and the company searched the JII and the confirmed there is an opportunity for them as well.
That's great. That's great. But by the way, when was the site? When was the official launch date of the site? When did it go live for the first time?
That was last September.
Okay.
It's been about 3 months since then.
Great. And what's your feeling on, I realize it's early days and you're in the process of building awareness and building traffic and things, but from
Yeah.
these early days, 3 months in, what's
Yes.
the response been like so far? And has that sort of met your expectations of where you hoped it would be?
Yes. In the 3 months, as I mentioned, since the launch, we've had several thousand active users. However, the usage frequency outside of Japan is still relatively low, I would say, with only about 10 to 20% of users accessing from outside Japan. We have seen access from the US and the UK, followed by a significant number of users from China and Taiwan. And we have found that the most popular Japanese incentives among users include those aimed at advancing decarbonization and revitalizing local areas. And we believe the access from overseas will continue to grow, and we are currently promoting the site in various ways, as you mentioned.
Yeah, well, that's great to hear, and I certainly, fully endorse from my 20 years of experience of bringing international companies into Japan and seeing examples of how some companies have succeeded in identifying and tapping into these programs, but also seeing how other companies have not become aware of what
Mm-hmm.
incentives and support may be available, or they perhaps get a little bit put off by what they perceive to be some of the barriers of applying for them and going through the process. So
Right.
I'm so happy to see this site that you've put together and the way that you're gathering it, all the information, and making it easy for foreign companies to access it and be aware of it, and then potentially be supported through the process. So I will encourage any companies that we come across and anyone listening into this podcast discussion today, if you are at the point where you're considering to set up your operation in the wider Asia region, or particularly if you're focused on Japan and you're wondering
Mm-hmm.
how to go about it and what support may be there, please go and check out the site and have a look at it. And I think you'll find very valuable information. So I would certainly endorse it and support it, and we'll do all we can to continue to raise the awareness for you and make more companies aware.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
I think in conclusion, what I would like to ask you, you've obviously got, a huge breadth of experience from many years of working in this particular sector of incentives and tax breaks and subsidies and things. And that's obviously led to this particular initiative that you've worked on. But I'd like to just sort of pick your brains on the future. What is your sort of outlook on the future of incentives in Japan, and any wisdoms or thoughts you can share with us along those lines?
Mhm. Yes, definitely. This is a very difficult question to answer, and this is my personal view, so don't take it as a corporate view or something like that. But I expect that annual budget amount allocated for incentives to remain at a similar scale as it is now. And initially, tax incentives were designed to benefit a wide range of private businesses without being limited to specific sectors, while subsidies were often created to accelerate investment in particular fields. However, recent trends indicate an increase in cases where tax incentives are also designed to promote specific corporate behaviors. And additionally, the government is implementing evidence-based policymaking, or EBPM in short. And in order to do so, collecting information related to investment is essential. Therefore, it is expected that the number of incentives tied to the application of business plans will increase going forward. And I anticipate that this trend will continue, making it crucial for business to actually understand Japanese policy directions and support measures. And to reflect these in your investment plan is very important.
That makes perfect sense, and I think that's also a great summary of why information that you are providing is just so valuable. That's another great endorsement of why it's so crucial to have sites like yours up there, helping foreign companies navigate their way through and understand how to go about tapping into the right incentives in the right sectors, etc.
Exactly.
Well, listen, it's been a great discussion. I've really enjoyed speaking with you, and thank you once again, Masaki-san, for making time available for us today. I hope for everyone listening into this discussion, it's really helped you get a better understanding of not just the general landscape of these initiatives and these programs that are going on, but also a little bit more information about how foreign companies are taking advantage of these incentives. And there's no doubt there are a lot of companies doing that, but also we touched on some of the topics of why foreign companies are not doing it and missing the opportunity. And we talked a little bit more about those specific fields, those really important fields where there could be an awful lot of help and support. But it's not just applicable to those fields. Across the board, for anyone that's seriously looking to set up operations in Japan and invest in Japan, there are clearly lots of initiatives out there. And once again, I just have to congratulate the team that Masaki is leading at GI3 on this great initiative they've come up with, and the great digital platform they've come up with. And it's really great to see that. And I'm glad that you've gone out and done it. And I would certainly encourage all foreign companies to use it and have a look at it. So in terms of what we do from this point onwards, Masaki-san, as you said, your portal is very easy to find online. We can go in via a quick Google search, but also we will put the link to the portal directly on Export to Japan and all the other platforms that are out there. And hopefully we will help you in your quest to make more people aware of what they can tap into and the support they can get. So Masaki-san, it just leaves me to thank you once again today for your time, for joining us and talking us through it. It's been a pleasure to catch up with you and speak with you. And for all those people listening into the podcast discussion, I hope you found that useful. And please go ahead and have a look at the site and see what support is there for you. So Masaki-san, thank you for your help. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.